I'd like to thank the Cambridge House team for organizing what seems to be a very successful conference. There seems to be a lot of buzz in the air, and overhearing comments from people on the floor, it seems to be very optimistic on the market. I've been coming here for 8 years now, and it's incredible to see the interest and the turnout for this year's show. A short disclaimer: 3i Partners cannot be held in any way responsible for opinions expressed by those who contributed to the preparation of this presentation. So, a brief outline. We're going to be looking at the importance of professionally managing above-ground risks, especially in the mining industry. We'll move on to right into the 3 safest countries to be mining in, the 3 riskiest, as well as looking at how similar they can be. You can have the riskiest and safest in the same list. And we'll move on to conclusions and a quick thank you and explaining who we are, 3i Partners, and any questions. Maybe we can talk about some of the countries in between the top and the bottom. So we're going to be looking at above-ground risks. These risks cannot be ignored. The above-ground risks discount exploration and junior mining companies. As you investors, you're looking for mining companies that could be great buys because of the risk factor. Ask questions when you're here today, asking the companies, how are they managing their risk? How are they managing their security? Do they have professionals involved in this, in their project? If you're providing the capital for the mining business that is investing overseas, make sure you have the right guys on the ground to help mitigate those risks. The corporate manager will have to consider following implications for every choice. You've got social, financial, reputational risk. You could also add environmental risk to the list, of course. The importance of professionally managing above-ground risks. Above-ground risks drive the fundamentals of supply and demand. Above-ground risks, the more demand there's going to prompt the companies to enter riskier regions. As mining and metal prices continue to rally, more countries will take advantage of the higher commodity prices. This is especially true as technology improves around the world and mining companies become more and more efficient underground. There is significant advantage for mining companies that are the first movers into these riskier jurisdictions. Those businesses pave the way to have the luxury of first choice on these deposits that create substantial discounts as the governments in these risky countries try to entice corporations in their country and help offset the risks. And we'll move right into the 3 safest mining countries. I'd like to point out, though, that even the safest mining countries have their risks. It's important for you, for a business, to do the proper due diligence and understand the risks and how they evolve through the lifetime of the mine. So, first one we have is Canada. It's a strong mining history. Many here on the floor today have a strong mining history in their families, including myself. There's also very much a skilled labor here in the country to be able to call upon. The country is abundant in diversified natural resources, dynamic population growth, and immigration flows, and there's also huge risks that cannot be overlooked. Currently, as a country as a whole, you have the NAFTA renegotiations going on at this time, which could drag on to what we call zombie negotiations. The Canadian government may just want to try to keep negotiating with what's going on in NAFTA until there's a change in government waiting, and hopefully they're hoping that there would be a change in government for the next election. That's playing a long game, and they're really dragging their feet on it. There's also the fear of the correction of the housing prices that could change this country quite quickly, and trying to control the inflation here in the country. There's also a very sensitive issue of Aboriginal risks. We're dealing with a situation where there's Aboriginal communities in remote areas along a very sensitive supply chain. And we need to make sure that that doesn't get, our very sensitive and precious supply chain doesn't get disrupted. Many of you will remember Oka crisis. There's no reason that that couldn't easily happen again. That flared up quite quickly. We had Idle No More not too long ago that flared up quite quickly, and surprisingly it didn't get worse. But if you have these communities that are in remote areas on supply chains, you have people within those communities that are not being that are looking into their history and they want to be the next Louis Riel, they're easily able to throw a wrench into the system and could cause similar situations all across the country like a string of pearls. There's a lot of interesting study from military studies here in Canada on this issue, and it's something that needs to be kept on everyone's radar. Botswana is another safe country to be looking into. Abundant and diverse natural resources. They have diamonds, uranium, coal. It's politically stable and level of governance that leads to be one of the top ones in sub-Saharan Africa. Overly dependent on the mining industry, as 80% of exports and 30% of budgetary revenues comes from the diamonds. President Kaman has been in politics in the country for 20 years, and he's been president for the last 10 years. Opposition has progressed in the country, and the last election, the government only received 47% of the vote. That's the lowest score yet. The next year, there are legislative elections, and it needs stimulus after this mining downturn and the high unemployment rate in the country. It's also crucial for the current government. This is crucial for the government to remain in power. I was there for a fact-finding trip not too long ago, a couple years ago, and found that a lot of people on the ground were interested in the opposition and perhaps having change in the country. So it's something to keep an eye on. The government that's in power there now has been in power since '66 when the country first gained independence. Another country considered a safe country to be mining in is Chile. It's a leading copper producer. It has numerous free trade agreements, skilled labor. It's politically, skilled labor is abundant. It is politically and institutionally stable and favorable business climate. Its weaknesses include the dependence on China and its need for copper, and also but we also have a second-time president, Pinera, will start in March 11th, and he was very pro-mining and pro-business that could help escalate the mining industry in that country even more. Moving on to the three riskiest countries. Now, I could make this easy and just point out countries that are war-torn, like Yemen, like Syria, like Afghanistan, Somalia, but I've decided we'll look at risks that are very risky but also have good opportunity costs, or upside risk is what I call it. So if you're wanting to be successful in the coming years, you're going to have to move away from some of these safe countries that I've listed. As the technology is improving and the companies are going to become more and more efficient underground, and after decades of mining in these safe countries, the resources get more and more challenging to find in these safe countries and jurisdictions. And in order to keep up with the demand, you're going to want to allocate some of your capital to these riskier countries. As the markets recover, more exploration teams you'll see will be reaching out to riskier and riskier places to find those big deposits to replace the current deposits that are going to be running out in the next 4 or 5 years. So a lot of the risk also has an upside risk or an opportunity cost. So looking at the riskiest countries, we have Mexico. Mexico has an election on July 1st. We have López Obrador, who caused the highest degree of uncertainty He's leading in the elections right now, but his reservations about privatization and free trade with agreements such as NAFTA would result in Mexico adopting more isolationist economic stance. At the same time, his opposition, the current finance minister, Jose Antonio Miade, has picked up in the polls recently, and so which may suggest that Mexico might have a choice candidate for who to follow in mainstream economic approach. Excuse me. The perception in Mexico is that it's a country that's very big. It's a country that has many Mexicos in it. Some parts of the country are very sophisticated with skilled talent and a lot of leverage to help if you play your cards right. There is also a lot of missed opportunity in the country that a lot of you should be aware of. You can lose your shirt if you work with the wrong guys on the ground there. And you need to work more with brains rather than muscle. It's a very relationship-based economy, so you want to make sure that you have someone that's been there for a long time, a local that is well ingrained within the system, both federally, locally, and has worked in the industry and knows natural resources in the country. You need someone that's going to get down to that granular level and is able to find a good strategy of operation and has operational knowledge of things and how things can change quickly there. As companies on the floor here, many of them will say that they have good ties with the government. You got to make sure that that government that they have good ties with, who's calling the shots? Is it the local mayor or is it the cartel in that area? Also, the project can evolve quite a bit. From the geologists coming in, that's when the expats start coming in, and you see the organized crime coming and getting more and more curious and wanting to gain an upper hand and how they can do business with you. So you've got some challenges there where everyone from the cartel will start trying to get guys that will be hired by the business so they have an ear within the company of knowing what's going on, to when you get more and more equipment, more drilling, more trucks coming in, you're going to get a lot more interest from both the good guys and the bad guys, and they're going to want a piece of the pie. So how do you deal with that, and how do you recognize where the risks and threats are? You need to be much more sophisticated, and it's not a one-size-fits-all country. You need to make sure that you're working with the companies under your compliances, and if your team is, even if your team that's on the ground there doesn't have to follow under your jurisdiction. The firms of global framework, firms with a global framework contract are getting disrupted because of the smaller guys that have those local relationships on the ground. One size does not fit all, and the above ground risks are very context dependent. Next country we have is Colombia. It's an interesting one as well. With the recent peace agreements that Santos has been able to push through in Colombia with the FARC, a lot of people are very hopeful and that things will open up and things will create more more business opportunities in the mining industry there. Think of the FARC as a pyramid, and at that top of the pyramid you have the leadership, which have either gone into politics or have retired. At the bottom of the pyramid, you're going to have the hired hands that are going back to the field work. It's the middle of the pyramid that you have to be careful about. This country is moving from an organized crime of the FARC that you could have one party to really deal with. There are other organizations as well, ELN, for example, but that middle of the pyramid are going to continue what they do best, which is that organized groundwork or organized crime work. So they may not get as big a prize. They will have more parties to deal with. It's going to be more of a disorganized crime rather than organized crime. So it's going to make things even more complicated. Mexico is very much the same way in that it's more of a disorganized. There's so many different cartels on the ground there. But at the same time, like Mexico, Colombia has very rational adversaries. They are profit-driven, and they are not religious-driven like some of these conflicts that are going on overseas. Despite Colombia's, there's also the concerns with illegal mining that are going on, and despite Colombia's effort to help stop illegal mining, authorities estimate that 50% of the country's 14,000 gold mines are illicit operations, with some 4,000 miners working for gangs and terrorists. So, example is this photo here with the illegal mining going on, of them taking the funds and it's going into the organized crime networks. Colombia also has a election coming up. Its current pro-business economic policies are likely to prevail, and a coalition government is very likely, given that no candidate is currently expected to win a majority, and the votes due to fragmented candidacy landscape. And the last one, for the riskiest, and I hope you enjoy the photo, is Iran. Now, that's been on a lot of people's radars, and it has been off radars, and I suggest you keep it on. I was there a couple years ago for a fact-finding trip, went all over the country, met with people from local farmers to people within the Ayatollah's inner circle that were on his famous flight from Paris in 1979 to Tehran, to business owners. And there's a lot of misunderstandings, there's a lot of resentment on both sides, both in Iran and in the West. But there is also a lot of opportunity. The people on the ground there that we spoke to wanted to know what propaganda we were getting as much as we wanted to know what propaganda they were getting. The risk there on the ground includes high inflation, social tensions, and an unhelpful business climate. Just last week, I met with a neighboring country to Iran's foreign minister, and he was talking about how Iran is very difficult to work with as a neighboring country. Europe, on the other hand, is much farther ahead than North America's market. A lot of them have MOUs already set up with Iran as the market opens up there, and that's something that investors and Canadians and North Americans should be looking at, seeing how we can get into this market. It's got a great geographic location. It's strong in resources. It has a strong natural resources industry from the oil gas side, and it's something where you need to have to look at the opportunities of the mineral market that's opening up there. In order to get in there, you need to have companies update their compliance policies. You also need to collect the market data that's on the ground to anticipate the market developments there. You also need to find a local partner. Now, I'm sure everyone has an Iranian friend that would be happy to help get you into that business, but be wary of them. There are a lot of good people out there, but a lot of them also say they have very good ties with the Minister of Mining and can help get you that meeting right away. You need to make sure you do your due diligence in making sure you know who you're working with and who is legit. Are they politically connected? And also, where is the money coming from for also investing in these opportunities? In conclusion, you need to know your above-ground risks. You need to manage them with a trusted team that knows what they're doing and that can help save time and money for the projects that you're looking at in these risks, in these both safe and risky countries. And also help point out the opportunities that you may not have considered before, and be able to look at where you could allocate some of that capital. And also, another important factor is make sure to start early. Often security management is called in too late, and it makes it a lot more difficult. But again, the three safest countries were Canada, Botswana, and Chile, and three riskiest countries that had opportunity costs and upside risk were Mexico, Colombia, and Iran. Thank you again for the Cambridge House team and for joining this talk. My name is Charles Dumbrille, Geopolitical Risk Partner at 3i Partners, a risk management solution firm that is able to advise mining projects globally. We help you manage the risks and create the best business opportunities for the local business strategies for your capital. If we have time for questions, I can take a couple now.